evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday, Bayou Blitz family. After a week, I'm not going to call it a vacation, so we'll just call it a mental health hiatus. We are back. I am Bob Rose. He is Brendan Boylan, and we are your duo for your Bayou Blitz podcast. How are you tonight, Brendan? Did you miss me?
Of course. I mean, we spoke for a long time on the phone. But seeing your gorgeous face, yeah, of course. I'm a little tired. A lot of time on the road. As you guys see, I'm not in my normal backdrop either. I am in a hotel room in Jacksonville. I did get to go to a Buc-ee's, which is always a plus when you're in Florida. Fresh brisket on the board, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, other than that, I'm doing all right. I know schedules, and to your point, probably some mental health is part of the reason for last week's hiatus. One of these days, our schedules will be normal.
No, they won't.
But one day, look, Bob, we're not asking for much. We're asking for a singular day that our schedule. I have a little bit of faith, a little bit of hope that the universe will give us just a single day.
More faith and hope than I have.
Yeah, understand.
But folks, we do have a bit of breaking news for you, and it kind of segues us, into our primary sponsor too. The New Orleans Saints. If you watched Under the Dome or follow us over at Saints Wire, you know that we reported last night that it looked like we've been talking for months reporting for months that the New Orleans Saints would play a game in Paris against the Cleveland Browns. The opponent has changed. The dates have remained the same. The location has remained the same. The opponent has, it did an about face on us. The New Orleans Saints are still going to play in Paris, Week 7, October 25th, but they will play against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the one confirmed schedule release that we have for the New Orleans Saints as we sit here. Anybody else that has reported anything, folks, nothing, and I mean zero of it, has even been close to confirmed, so believe none of it. None of it. The Saints will play the Steelers as a home game in Paris, France on October 25th. That's the one game that we know. The official schedule release will be tomorrow evening. Stay tuned to us over at the Saints Wire. Nick Underhill, John Hendricks also do a great job over at New Orleans.football. It'll kind of be a race for the two of us, two of our sites to get the actual schedule leaks out, during the course of the day. But seriously, don't follow anybody else. Wait till you hear it confirmed from one of our two sites. Otherwise, it ain't real. That's a promise. Same thing Brendan and I tell you during free agency, during pre-draft visits, even during trade deadline news during the season. Be very, very, very careful who you follow. Not who you follow, who you listen to. And I constantly get a whole bunch of messages, and that's always, that's fine, folks. I don't mind at all. We volunteer that all the time, but I get questions like, hey, is this going on? Hey, can you confirm that? And more often than not, I tell you, no, we have, we have no sources on that. So I'm going to be honest. We're going to be honest. But on that note, again, we've been talking about the Paris trip, the Paris game for a couple of months now. The only thing about it that has changed is the opponent. It's now the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of the Cleveland Browns, but you can still party with a purpose. Joining us at Get Checked or Check Out, the Get Checked or Check Out Foundation in Paris, France, for the Saints game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on October 25th. Contact Tracy Ransom at phone number 225-400-3599 or GLT by Tracy, that's TRACEY, at gmail.com. Tracy Ransom is the one spearheading the packages, the travel packages for Get Checked or Check Out. But the details include 5 days hotel, round trip airfare, including airport transfers. A deposit is required, but final payment won't be due for this trip until August. There's at least a few former Saints legends, both personal and football legends, that are confirmed to be going, as well as several fellow members of the Houdat Nation. And we're going to get to enjoy a Saints game, overseas fun and memories, and all while benefiting an amazing charity and the people who run it at Get Checked or Check Out. Their website is tcynow.org. It's at the bottom of the screen. They have sponsored the Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise every single year for the last dozen plus. This past year, we all went together in the Bahamas, had a wonderful, wonderful time. 2027 dates for that particular trip have yet to be finalized, but we're going to keep you abreast of the details there. But they're adding this fundraiser, this Paris trip, in a Houdat invasion of France, with great people and benefiting a great charity. And tcynow.org helped thousands and thousands of cases in 2025, and we're hoping to significantly increase that number in 2026. One of the ways to do so is you get to go on vacation. All the money for these trips benefit this terrific foundation. We also want to remind everybody that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So make sure you're trying to stay as healthy as you can. Always, 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 both physically and mentally. But check in on your friends too, especially those that you feel like might be going through a little bit of a rough time, or maybe some friends that you haven't heard from, and friends, family members you haven't heard from in a while. Believe you me, it always brightens someone's day. It always brightens my day when I hear from someone that I haven't heard from in a while. So only takes a couple seconds to reach out to a couple people in your life and say, hey, how you doing? Been a while since we chatted. Hope everything is all right. Thinking about you. Love, Bob. That's my reach out to you. But at tcynow.org, you can't beat the cause. You cannot beat the people. And like I said, you sign up for this trip, you're getting to have a lifetime memory while benefiting such a wonderful cause in the process.
Yeah, and like Bob said, a little bit different than the usual cruise. Chance to go and be a part of some history, right? Go see the first ever NFL game in Paris, France. So check them out. You see on the bottom of your screen the website tcynow.org. And also thank you guys who are joining us now to the show. John, for tuning in as always. I do need to reach out to you once I return from. You used to call this the World Tour, Bob, when I used to go out on the road with Artemis. So now it's a little solo World Tour. But once I return from this World Tour, I'll be reaching out to you. Let's talk about the Saints. So not so much a World Tour for the Saints, but we saw some interesting names in rookie mini camp. Obviously, the draft picks, the undrafted guys, only one guy earning a contract, but a few names to talk about. And naturally, before we get into the draft picks, I want to talk about the one name that really stood out to me, and I think stood out to a lot of people. Even got a post from the Saints with this guy coming into rookie minicamp, and that is veteran kicker Younghoe Koo, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons and the New York Giants. And the reason I want to talk about this, and this is like the way too early conversation. Maybe not way too early. We're only, 2 months away, really, from training camp. As much as I was screaming to whoever would listen over the last couple months about the Saints bringing in a veteran quarterback, and then I get one, and Bob texts me, "You got your veteran quarterback, Brendan." It was Zach Wilson. Not exactly what I was looking for.
That's the worst Bob impression I have ever heard. But go on.
I don't have a good accent for it at all. It was more of just like, but nonetheless, I do think that there is room for a conversation about the Saints bringing in a veteran kicker. And this is something the Saints have done for years, even when the kicking position was almost solidified, right? You look at the years with Lutz, where the Saints were bringing in other veteran kickers to just compete in training camp. You look at, the mess of kickers before that, when it was not a solidified position. The Saints were bringing in the Shane Grahams of the world. And, we could play that whole kicker roulette game one day too. I know we have in the past before. But they've always done that to keep the position competitive. And while I think Charlie Smith had a good end of the season, and I believe you and I pod and said this is going to be his job to lose going into the off season. I do think bringing in a guy like Younghoe Koo, who again was not signed to a contract, but the Saints could certainly give him a training camp invite later down the road if he impressed. I think it's interesting because when I think veteran guys, I think more of a guy like Younghoe Koo, who has had a solidified NFL career, than I do when we're talking about bringing Zach Wilson in to be the veteran backup quarterback. I was hoping to get someone more along the lines of Younghoe Koo, long career, like borderline Pro Bowl guy, just trying to stick on to a team or stick around in the NFL. So what say you, Bob? Because that was the one veteran name I think that stood out to most people. Do you think it would be wise of the Saints to bring in someone of that caliber to compete at the kicker position?
I'm not against it. And first, I would rather Younghoe Koo be the backup quarterback than Zach Wilson. If we're talking about stuff like that, don't care. I have seen Zach Wilson throw a ball, and I'd rather Younghoe Koo.
There you go.
But no, I'm not against it. I don't think this is an indictment towards Charlie Smith whatsoever, because as you said, the way Charlie kicked to end the regular season, we both agreed that it was his job to lose going into 2026 training camp. But we both also said at the time that we didn't think that the job should be handed to him by default. I think that's the mistake the Saints made with why can't I talk tonight? Sorry, guys. With Blake Groupie. Now, granted, Blake had a nice year and a half plus run. But what happened was when Blake got the yips, which is more of a golf term, when Blake couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, the Saints really went into a scramble, not really knowing where to turn. And the same thing happened a couple years prior when Will Lutz, missed that year. I think it was 2021 with a groin injury. New Orleans went through 4 kickers that year. At the very least, I am not against bringing in a couple different veteran kickers. Remember too, they did sign an undrafted rookie, Mason Shipley, most recently at the University of Texas. So Smith's going to have his competition in training camp. But if neither of these young kickers, Smith or Shipley, works out, you got to have reliable numbers in that Rolodex to be able to call, if they are in fact free agents. Maybe they saw what they wanted to see out of Younghoe Koo, or whom. If not, even if they did, I again would not be against bringing in another kicker or two. Maybe not even for the training camp roster, just for some tryouts. So again, you have a few names in your Rolodex, so that way you aren't up a creek without a paddle if your the young kickers on your roster don't work out.
I was just thinking, we're getting to a point where you can say Rolodex, and some of our younger audience has no idea what that is.
I know it.
It just hit me, and now I feel old, so I can only imagine how you feel, Bob.
Yeah. Now, I guess I could start saying scroll through your contacts.
You could, but
that wouldn't be me.
Yeah, Rolodex is a more fun term anyway. I digress. Outside of that, the Saints did make one signing from rookie minicamp. Standout of rookie minicamp, Bob. This feels like now like a receiver room just full of a lot of young talent that could use a veteran guy, perhaps. Why don't you tell us more about who the Saints signed and what you were hearing from some of the boots on the ground about why he was so impressive throughout rookie minicamp?
Well, and the one player, the one invitee, tryout player that the Saints did sign out of last weekend's camp was wide receiver Brock Rechsteiner. Played collegiately, undrafted rookie. Played collegiately at Jacksonville State. I didn't put up big production, but was second or third on the Gamecocks in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns last season. Special teamer, not so much a kick returner, more kick and punt coverage. Big, strong kid, about 6'2", 225, but as solid as they come. And if the name sounds somewhat familiar to you old school wrestling fans, he is indeed the son of Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, WWE Hall of Famer. The first game started, Scott did. First gained stardom in the WCW in the late 80s, early 90s. The outlaw era, my favorite era of wrestling, by the way. Scott Steiner's tag team brother of the Steiner brothers, Rick Steiner, has a son already in the WWE, Braun Breaker, and Brock himself signed basically a futures deal. It's called an NIL deal, with the WWE, for their beginners program. So he has his foot in the door there, but his pro wrestling career might have to wait, because he did impress enough at Saints camp to be signed to a contract, to at least be brought back through OTAs and minicamp and most likely training camp. Again, Brock played at Jacksonville State, was originally signed, given a tryout at the Tennessee Titans rookie minicamp the previous weekend. Obviously didn't work out, but the Saints liked and heard what they liked, from Brock from that. And, again, he performed pretty well at their camp. The tape I was able to study on the young man, he has very good straight line speed. He runs a 4.48, sudden burst. He quite a few plays, he'd get that ball, turn immediately upfield, and instant acceleration. I did not see a whole lot in the way of a route tree, change of direction, agility, those kind of things. So it makes you think that his route tree would be somewhat limited unless he can improve on those attributes. But again, he was a special teamer at Jacksonville State. He will have his opportunities to make the depth chart primarily through that role. He'll have to turn some heads as a receiver, in camp practices and the preseason games as well. But everybody knows, and Brendan and I tell you guys every year, the people at the back half of the depth chart, in this case at wide receiver, that earn that 5th and 6th spot, they're going to be turning heads as special teamers. Otherwise, they ain't going to make the roster.
Absolutely. And we say it every year, even though it's less and less because of the rule changes. There are guys who strictly make NFL rosters being special teamers and can make
Mhm.
NFL rosters for a decade because of their ability to be on special teams. Obviously, JT Gray was one of those guys for the Saints for a long time. Parker Malott was one of those guys still bouncing around in the league as a guy who elite special teams talent. So you have the potential to make the roster. But to Bob's point, I mean, don't expect this guy to all of a sudden find himself as receiver 4 or something like that. It is a fun story, though. Going back to what we talked about during the draft as well, guys who have siblings or parents that are professional athletes, I think there is a little bit of boost in stock there. I always have. Say what you will about the WWE or the WCW, or just wrestling in general. Like you're a professional athlete, whether the matches are scripted or not. You are a professional athlete.
For sure.
And to quote one of the greatest YouTube videos of all time, "It's still real to me, damn it." But back to football. I think some of the other news, at least out of rookie minicamp, was Tyson's hamstring,
Mhm.
right? And some of the injury. I think a lot of people focus in on that. Maybe some people are holding their breath or saying, "Oh my God, here we go again." A receiver who's dealt with injuries and healthy. I'd like to just throw it out there. I think you'd agree with me. We haven't really talked about this on or off the air. It is the most precautionary precaution that you can take in his first, 4 days as a New Orleans Saint, to say, you know what, we're going to take this extremely slow, extremely easy. And, if this is something that continues into OTAs and continues into training camp, okay, then maybe we're having a different conversation. But for right now,
Mhm.
I'm not reading any deeper into it than, you know what, he's coming off of some injuries, and we're not going to push anything, especially in rookie minicamp.
100% agree. And Alan Ulrich and I talked a little bit about that on Under the Dome last night. Firstly, this is a first round draft pick. And by the way, same with Kristen Miller, your second round pick. Didn't see the field at all. Your high draft picks, that isn't what this rookie camp is for. It's for the undrafted guys, the veteran invites, and rookie invites, just trying to crack a roster. They are the ones that have to impress at these things. Unless you're a quarterback and you need as many reps as possible. Tyson at wide receiver, like you just kind of intimated, Brendan. The last thing I want to do if I'm Kellen Moore is push a hamstring on one of my skill players who I expect to start and end up setting him back for weeks or more. This rookie camp was just to get the guys in, acclimated to some of their teammates, acclimated to the coaches and their styles, and probably a lot of film study. Jordan Tyson was not going to see that much on-field work anyway, even if he was 100% healthy. That's just fact, folks. Now, like Brendan said, if this hamstring extends through all the OTA sessions coming up through the end of the month and into June, and obviously into training camp, then it's a different conversation. But right now, I just, your hamstring's a little bit sore. Take the day off, young man. Get to know your receiver coach, Keith Williams, chat him up on the sidelines. That's all we want you in for right now anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And to your point, for the most part, nobody's talking about the fact that your second round pick wasn't present. Well, he was present, but it wasn't present on the field for any of it either. Though he was spotted rocking a Joe Horn jersey. out in New Orleans that week, which was always good to see.
Mhm.
Which, say what you will, but a guy who went to the University of Georgia, obviously, there's some Falcon ties, or at least fandom as a youngster. So to be able to throw that out and throw on a Joe Horn jersey is a big plus. Though Joe Horn did spend a weird year in Atlanta, and complete sidebar, they had moved their camp to Flowery Branch that year, where I was living at the time and going to school, and the training camp was right across from high school that year. That was the first year after Vic had got arrested. They brought in Joe Horn. There was a lot of weird things going on across the street from the school. That's all I'm saying.
Damn.
A lot of protests outside the building, the brand new facility they just put together. But all right, so rookie minicamp. I mean, obviously, there's not going to be a whole lot more than what we just talked about to talk about. We'll have, as Bob mentioned, we'll have voluntary OTAs coming up, and then mandatory OTAs are going to be about halfway through June, which is a good segue into Alvin Kamara, who had some Instagram posts and comments about like fishing trips and going to Alaska with his buddies. Right at that time of mandatory OTAs, which is a very Alvin Kamara thing to do. I think Alvin and Cam have really enjoy the trolling that they do online.
Mm-hmm.
That they really pride themselves in, and it goes back. We can throw out other Saints over the years that have done that, or even a Saints head coach that used to do that, and just really embrace that part of it. We don't really have anything new on the Kamara and Jordan front, so I just want to address that now. There's nothing really new. It's really just kind of sitting at the end of the game.
Yeah, but yeah, as long as his name came up first, and it's going to be a shorter conversation than Alvin. Cam was not going to be signed by this point anyway. I believe that. I would even be surprised if Cam was signed before OTAs. I think that the coaches, Brandon Staley specifically, want to see what they have in Tyree. You have a pretty good idea what you have in Carl Granderson and Chris Rumpf, but you want to see what you have in Tyree Wilson and Anthony Jennings. If either or both of them, are very impressive, then maybe you don't believe that there's an urgency to sign Cam Jordan. If you see what both Wilson and Jennings have shown throughout most of their NFL careers, and the inability to consistently disrupt the passer, then okay, Cam, you still want to play? Here's a new deal. Most likely 1 year. We'd like you in for training camp. That's the way I believe it's going to go down.
Since you brought up Tyree Wilson, just a note, this shouldn't be a shock to anybody, but if you missed it last week, his fifth-year option was not picked up. So he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. I mean, I could see Cam, if he comes back to New Orleans, I could see him not sign until during training camp. This isn't going to be something that gets resolved tomorrow. And because I said that, he's going to sign somewhere tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
But naturally. Alvin Kamara, like you said, is a little more interesting, a little bit more to talk about, but not on a negative front. I think for the first time in a while, it is somewhat positive or less mysterious on what the future holds for Alvin Kamara. Because we're hearing rumors. And I say we, Bob and I, not hearing from anybody credible about it, but there were these rumors floating on social media about is Alvin Kamara going to consider retirement and this and that? And we kind of warned you from the jump, as Bob said at the beginning of this, just be careful who you're listening to about things, because we had no credible people tell us, hey, we're starting to hear some buzz that maybe Alvin's really thinking about this. Anyway. About a week ago, Alvin was on a podcast with former Saints left tackle Teron Armstead, addressing some of the things with the moves the Saints have made in the offseason. And Kamara actually spoke pretty highly of the artist formerly known as Travis Jr. I'm going to continue to say that.
So am I.
I cannot get the Travis A-Chan. That's gonna take me a little bit, especially being as someone who was in the Carolinas while he was at Clemson. I can't get past it. So, speaking pretty highly of what he thinks they could accomplish as a duo, and even referencing back some of the previous running mates he had in New Orleans, specifically talking a little bit about Mark Ingram and what they were able to do playing off of each other, but also, unifying in the backfield. So that was an interesting thing. It was one of the first, if not the first, public comments that Kamara had made since the signing about the signing. Mickey Loomis had made some comments about Alvin as well that were pretty they weren't, again, not negative, but it was just very vanilla and almost like too vanilla. It felt almost too comfortable, and it felt as if he was talking about Alvin Kamara in a sense that Alvin wasn't under contract. At least that's how some people were interpreting how Mickey was talking about it. Part of it is just the way that Mickey talks. But I could understand why people were concerned going into last week before Alvin had made some of those comments. Now you get the feel that, Alvin does want to be around, and Alvin is excited about what the Saints have done and what it means for his role. Are you interpreting it any other way? And how are you interpreting some of the – I know how you're going to answer this, but I still have to ask it, is how are you interpreting some of the cryptic messages on social media over the last 24 hours or so from Albert?
I mean, the cryptic messages are they're Alvin doing what Alvin has literally always done.
His whole career.
Yeah, he doesn't play around with people's emotions like Cam does. Cam gets pure enjoyment out of doing stuff like that. That's just that's Alvin being Alvin. And I know, Kellen Moore created a little bit of wave too. And Alan talked about this a little bit, addressed it a little bit last night. When Coach Kellen Moore said a couple of times, when asked about Alvin Kamara, that he's just part of the roster evaluation process. That to me struck a very Bill Belichick chord, where if Kellen would have ended each of those sentences with, he's just part of the roster evaluation process. Next question. He's just part of the roster evaluation process. Next question. There's very little to translate here, folks. Alvin Kamara is under contract. He's on the roster. He's part of the 90-man roster that will be evaluated from now through the end of training camp. That's not evaluated as in, he may or may not be on the roster. No, the evaluations also go when you figure out your depth chart, when you figure out how you're going to use people, players. What are their best attributes? How does that fit into your system? Whatever weaknesses they have, how can I minimize that? All of that is part of roster evaluation. And, again, Kamara not being part of rookie minicamp. He's not coming to OTAs either, folks. Why? Because he never comes to OTAs.
Never has.
Period. This is not news. I'm probably going to write very little, if any, about it through OTAs. I will concentrate on real news. I've said all along, I believed Alvin Kamara was going to be part of this roster, at least for 2026. I believe his role is going to be reduced. I think that Kellen Moore told us how he felt about Alvin Kamara when they made a priority to go get the running back formerly known as ATN in free agency. And that's not to say that Kellen doesn't believe, or Mickey Loomis doesn't believe that Alvin Kamara can't contribute. But I think that it was a very visible and loud turning of the page, not closing the book, but turning the page to the next chapter. This is who HN is who they want to be their featured back. Alvin can still contribute. Alvin will still contribute. He's not going to retire. I am 100% certain that some conversations have taken place about a possible trade of Alvin Kamara, both with other teams and with Kamara and his representatives. Whether that trade takes place or not, I doubt it. But I could see a scenario where it happens. Other than that, there's no disharmony between Kamara and the team, or the team and Kamara. This is just part of what happens when you rebuild the roster. Some players get phased out. Taysom Hill. Some players just flat out step away. Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, you pushed out the door. Alontae Taylor. Cam Jordan is still in limbo. Some players just kind of get phased out. That's what we're seeing with Alvin Kamara. This is just part of the process, folks. Again, I still believe that Kamara is going to be a Saint in 2026. I do not believe he'll retire. I think the greater possibility is that he's traded. The slimmest possibility is that he retires. And a very, very, very slim possibility is that he gets designated as a post June 1st release. If we're odds making things here.
I have a tough time believing he would get traded. And I think part of that just comes from what Alvin has publicly said, right? Even alluding to the fact that he would consider retiring before playing for another team, which mirrors. But
yeah, and I don't think it's complete smoke and mirrors. But some people are taking that as etched in stone. Alvin would never want to play for another team. No, you got to read between the lines here. Alvin's also a businessman. His off the field ventures have proven that. Alvin would not play. I don't believe would play for the Cleveland Browns, the Raiders, the Cardinals. Some of the dysfunctional organizations. But if a visor wearing coach in the AFC that just made the conference title game, who's pretty familiar about how to use Kamara, if he wants him, if a guy like Andy Reid, guy like Dan Campbell, if a contender who has an offense that Alvin would fit, albeit in a lesser role, where Alvin's skill set would fit, I think that when I said before that I am 100% positive that the Saints have had some sort of trade conversations with other teams and Alvin's representative, those are conversations, again, behind closed doors. Hey, Alvin, let's make a list here. We're not saying we want to trade you, and we're not saying anybody is offered, but let's lay out a couple different scenarios of places that you would and wouldn't play. Because we've had conversations with, and I'm not saying it has or hasn't happened, but I'm painting hypotheticals here. We've had conversations with Andy Reid. We've had conversations with, who's the dude up in Joe Brady. Again, pretty familiar with Alvin Kamara. We've had conversations with Sean Payton. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. And yeah, just because conversations have taken place doesn't mean a deal is going to take place either. Just I think and I'm not going to call them battle lines, but all lines of demarcation on Kamara's side and on the Saints side, as well as other teams who may have had interest in Kamara. Those lines have all been drawn within the last, I'm going to say, 6 weeks.
I'm sure. I was just pulling up his stats on last year.
They're ugly.
Yeah, I was going to say obviously shortened because he didn't play a whole lot. I didn't realize he only scored once.
Yeah.
It's also kind of disappointing. And you and I have talked about it from a play calling standpoint more than a Kamara standpoint over the years. But seeing those first 5 years in the league and those numbers and this Hall of Fame trajectory to the last 4 years, like, wow. He has 86 scrimmage touchdowns, but like 60 of those came in the first 6 years. He had a year where he had 22 scrimmage touchdowns. I do think ETN is going to benefit Alvin Kamara and create opportunities for Kamara in key situations, third downs, red zones. It may get Alvin a few more touches inside the red zone that aren't just, here's the ball, Alvin, go up the middle. Because we saw a ton of that. Also, not having Taysom Hill on the roster is probably going to benefit Alvin Kamara in the red zone as well.
Good, yeah.
Which leads to John Butler's question, do you think Taysom is done in the NFL? I do.
Yes.
I don't think there's a situation where he comes and plays for anybody unless, and this will be something that continues to get thrown out until players from this time period are no longer in the NFL. If there comes a point like in week 12 where Sean Payton's like, I could really use a guy, I think there could be a phone call. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how serious of a conversation it would be, more than just, hey, Taysom, checking in. How's everything going? What would you think about the potential of, kind of just being my short yardage guy as we make a Super Bowl run here? And maybe Taysom's like, yeah, sounds great. Or maybe he's like, no, like, thanks, coach, but I'm not really interested in it. I could see that. Remember, one of my favorite Mike Tillier stories of all time was Mike Tillier sharing with us back on Saints News Radio many moons ago that Tim Tebow was the first phone call from Sean Payton about the Taysom Hill role, and Tim turned it down. So when I say making a phone call, I'm talking more of that line, just like, hey, just want to know if you're interested. I'm just putting a flyer out there. Also, you talk about some of the biggest what ifs in Saints history. Now, Taysom ended up working great for what the Saints needed Taysom to be, right? I mean, he's one of a kind. But talking about a what if for Tim Tebow, like, what could that have done for Tim Tebow? Now, Taysom's faster than Tim, probably stronger than Tim. But in theory, and we're going down like a rabbit hole that I did not expect to go down today, Taysom had to make NFL starts at quarterback because Drew got hurt.
Yeah.
Could we have had Tebow mania in New Orleans? Or would have Sean gone a different route? I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there. Do you remember the What If L that used to be on NFL Network?
Oh, I love that. It was Dave Damashek. Yeah. So I love those ones.
The What If L, like what if Tim Tebow was Taysom Hill instead of Hill, and just how that would have affected everything? Somebody get Dave on the line. I need this drawn out and animated now.
And the Tebow mania would have been spelled Tebeaux. It
would have been great. It would have been awesome.
Yeah.
It would have been awesome.
I could see the shirts too. I'd have owned a shirt. I'd have bought a shirt immediately.
I'm sure because you have love for Denver still. Like I'm sure you enjoyed Tebow Mania when it happened in Denver.
Yeah, yes and no. It was
It was a lot.
yeah. I hated every single Tebow start for the first 3 quarters. Um, in fact, there were a couple games where I went about my business, doing whatever for 3 quarters. I just had the game on in the background. Um, and I would actually only sit down and watch when the Broncos were on defense, to see if they could keep the score close. And if they could keep the score close, then I would glue myself to the couch for the fourth quarter. It was such a bizarre year, watching the Denver Broncos in 2011 with Tim Tebow, and thank God for the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham, to save me from absolute insanity, at least until the divisional playoffs.
Yeah, but I mean, you had like two opposite ends of the spectrum. You had an offense that could
Literally, yeah.
and then an offense that was just like, I think we're gonna play football in the final 5 minutes. Like maybe the last 5 minutes we're gonna decide to play football. John just threw it out. So this is for you guys that didn't catch that. That is how that would have been spelled if he was a New Orleans Saint. That would have been fun. Anyway, that was way down the rabbit hole to ask for the question of do you think Taysom Hill is done? I think Taysom Hill is done.
Yeah.
Again, I could see Sean calling him up if they need a guy like situational short yardage if for whatever reason they really struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
yeah,
with like Bo Nix and like everything. Like I don't know where the Broncos are going to be. So that would be the only team that I would monitor for Taysom Hill because
yeah, most likely. And I think that it's that kind of scenario, and with the Saints too. It's that kind of scenario. Why I almost said Tebow? Why Taysom hasn't officially made any kind of announcement whatsoever? Because he's trying to get his own body right too. Still recovering from the knee injury, yes, but also so many other injuries that he has dealt with through his career. And he is going to probably get a couple of feeler phone calls just before the start of training camp. Hey Taysom, how you feeling? Do you think you have anything left in the tank? If so, would you be interested if we come calling 2 weeks into the preseason kind of thing?
Yeah. That's kind of where we stand on Taysom Hill, which I don't want to say he's been the forgotten name, but I think a lot of people think it's kind of etched in stone on what's going on with Taysom Hill. Let's talk a little bit schedule release. Obviously, we'll get the full details tomorrow. You guys can follow Bob and John Sigler and their team over at the Saints Wire, a USA Today publication. They're going to have all the breaking for you. The only one is confirmed. The only one that we know is Saints playing the Steelers in Paris in late October. I think it's funny that we do this every year, that we get these rankings of strength of schedule versus last year's, because teams turn over so much. Right, a 30-year team is different every year.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints have the second best, worst. How do you rank that? Second easiest strength of schedule. Is that the best way to say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have the second easiest strength of schedule according to records from a year ago, which again I kind of say tongue in cheek because again it's a completely different team every year.
Mm-hmm.
That's the facts of it. I do think there's an opportunity for the Saints to make a run at the division. I think we say that every year the last 5 years too, because the division sucks.
Yeah.
They're talking about reformatting the playoffs to where if you win the division, you don't get necessarily guaranteed a home game, which I don't like that. You should be rewarded for winning your division.
Yep.
I understand there's been other leagues that have made that move to where it's whoever has the best record, that's who's going to host. The NBA did that. The NBA does not care about division championships anymore because the division title winners do not host the first round. It just is what it is. The NFL, I would, especially because of the amount of games that they play, I would think it'd be a major for a team. And I think the owners would agree from a financial standpoint. Is like, well, if we win the division, we should get an extra home game. It's more money for us to do. Well, I think the owners are going to kind of step in and give that side of it to Roger Goodell. But I digress. What are the things we're looking for? At least the things that I'm looking for with schedule release. The biggest thing for me is always when's the bye week.
Yes.
You don't want the bye week to be too early. You don't want it to be too late. I'm also looking at stretches of games where you're playing either divisional opponents or NFC opponents. Right? If you have a 4 or 5 game stretch where it's all NFC opponents, that's a critical stretch. And you don't want that too early in the season. You don't want that too late in the season. But the reality is, I don't really know how much the schedule release, and we've talked about this last year, it's just another way for the league to milk money and get airtime and TV time. I don't know how critical it really is to anything when we're talking about it in May, outside of trying to plan your away trips or what have you.
Right.
And I don't know how much Bob and I are going to be able to sit there with you, analyze it, and give you guys anything of substantial value.
All right. Now,
we don't even know the rosters yet.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. We will, or we will try, because it's part of our job.
Bob's job.
But
Bob.
But yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I don't get too caught up in, oh my God, they have this many games against playoff opponents from last year. Because a great example, the Steelers, the game in Paris, Pittsburgh was a playoff team last year. The 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers will resemble nothing of the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, is that a good, bad, or indifferent thing? We don't know yet. The Lions. The Lions were not a playoff team last year, but I think that we can all agree that they are one of the most talented teams, certainly offensively, in the NFL. The Bengals. The Bengals did not make the playoffs, but they went a stretch without Joe Burrow. Otherwise, most people believe they would have been a playoff team. And so on and so forth. The Giants. They have a new coach. The Ravens. The Ravens were a missed field goal, from or a either a missed field goal or a last second field goal, one of the two, from being in the playoffs. But they have a new coach. We have no idea what kind of identity that they're going to have. Yeah, right. The Vikings, are they going to turn a corner with J.J. McCarthy? Or are they going to continue to be overrated and overhyped every single year? Are the Falcons going to continue to falcon? We think so. But is this the year that they don't? The Buccaneers are very clearly turning the page, moving on from players like Mike Evans, Levante David, Jamel Dean. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for them? You don't know. Are the Panthers going to continue? When last year ended, you and I sat here in this very same spot. I don't think you were in Florida, but anyway, on this very same show, and we said, okay, heading into the 2026 offseason, it's pretty clear that the two NFC South teams on the rise are the Panthers and the Saints. Well, can you still say that after the offseason moves? Personally, I think so. That's a whole other show topic in and of itself. The Browns, just like the Browns going to continue to be the Browns, or is this the 1 year that they aren't going? The exception to the rule. You don't know. So, and Alan Ulrich says this all the time, and I agree with him. With the schedule, I only pay attention to the when and where. When are you going to be playing the Giants on the road, the Bears on the road, the Ravens, the Bengals on the road? Because those are potential cold weather games. You get them in late November, December, early January. Um, do you have, and the NFL loves, Goodell loves to do this to the Saints. Give them during a critical stretch, give them 3 or 4 straight road games. Does that happen this year? If so, when does it happen? So those are the kind of that, and obviously the primetime games.
That's exactly what I was going, giving them short weeks. That's exactly it. That's the type of analysis you'll get from us. But in terms of like, oh, the Saints have like a cake, like we're not going to sit there and be able to tell you because Bob just laid it out. I mean, Lions didn't make the playoffs. I think the Lions were my NFC pick last year.
Same.
Right? You brought up the Ravens, who I said have a guy who's multiple MVPs and a running back who's going to be probably a Hall of Famer. Right? I don't care how bad they were the year before. You have talent like that, generational talent like that. Like you're always a team I'm going to be watching out for.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the Panthers that are kind of in a weird spot because Bryce Young's in his 5th year. Is this going to be the year that Bryce Young proves like, hey, you guys got to pay me and I'm going to be your guy? Or is it going to be another year of just like, Is Xavier Legette ever going to figure it out? Is Tet McMillan going to take another jump? They're getting Jonathan Brooks back from injury. They're running back out of Texas from a few years ago. Is he going to be a guy that plays a little bit of a Rico Dowdle role, where he kind of pops off and is a running mate with Chuba Hubbard? You mentioned Tampa Bay and being a team that is clearly turning a page, maybe actually closing the book on a lot of things. What's that identity going to look like? Because Baker Mayfield, after having a stellar year the year prior, started looking a little bit more like Browns Baker Mayfield last year. The Atlanta Falcons, Michael Penix. Like what is Michael Penix? I don't know. I don't think the Falcons know. Those are 3 teams in your division where it's like, I don't know, coin flip. We don't know what they're going to be. So how can we provide you educated analysis of any of those games 5-6 months before any of those games are supposed to happen?
Right, and the Saints being a last place team in 2025 have a last place schedule. So as a result, they get last place teams from last year: Browns, Cardinals, and Raiders all at home. And then another last place team, the Giants, on the road. But every single year we see at least 2 worst to first teams. Were finished last in their division the previous year, vault to maybe not a division champion, but at least a playoff team. Is that going to be any of these teams? But again, it's the where and when, that matter to me. For example, I feel a hell of a lot better about playing the Bears in Chicago in September or October than I would Christmas Eve.
Sure, of course. I don't want to go to Soldier Field for Christmas Eve. That sounds awful. Okay, I'll throw one at you just to give everybody some PTSD. I feel a lot better about playing the Raiders at home early in the year when they're probably starting Cousins than I do Fernando Mendoza making his NFL debut in the Superdome, because we know what the next do in the Superdome when they're NFL debuts.
No, I mean, to be fair, those were Dennis Allen defenses, but I get you.
More of a PTSD joke, but yeah, I mean, like things like that. Those are the things that are important. I feel better about playing the Falcons at home late in the year in a rivalry game. Mostly just because they're more fun to watch when things are on the line than I do necessarily playing Atlanta in the middle of the season. I feel better about Baltimore early in the season with a new head coach while they're still trying to figure out their system. There are so many storylines like that. And those are the things that are going to matter. Not necessarily like what this team looks like, because we're giving you educated guess analysis as well, because again, we don't know what those teams are going to look like. Every year, and knock on wood, and I don't wish this upon anybody, but we have injuries every year in training camp, non-contact injuries that change the trajectory of teams, whether it's New Orleans or one of the teams that they're playing, right? So we don't know. What if quarterback for whatever team misses the entire year, right? I don't know.
No, I mean, there are going to be, and again, we say all this, yet when the schedule comes out, we're going to do our best to break down the roster matchups as best we can in May and June. There are some potential, juicy headlines. A lot of people seem to be predicting that the Saints will host the Falcons on Monday Night Football in Week 3 because it's the 20th anniversary of the return to the Dome after Katrina.
That would be cool.
It would be. No, they don't. They don't think that way about the Saints. I see why a lot of people are saying it, and I think it would be an awesome storyline. But I just, another awesome storyline. If Shador wins the starting job for the Browns, the Shador versus Shuck, Jackson Dart versus Shuck. You get to play Clint Kubiak in Vegas. Obviously Mike McCarthy, not only a former offensive coordinator for the Saints, but the guy who fired Kellen Moore when Moore was his offensive coordinator in Dallas.
Yep.
That's going to be a nice storyline, for the Steelers. For the Steelers game. Caleb Williams for the Bears. I think Caleb is overrated, but will Caleb stay? He's certainly proven to be a clutch player, though. Will he take that next step forward? So all kinds of storylines that will break down when the schedule comes out, and we'll have some fun doing it, as you like to call it. We're entering silly season. So we're going to have as much fun as we can while still trying to be professional and analytical. Professional-lytical.
That makes up for not making up words over the draft.
No, I'm trying.
Silly season preview, because I am wearing orange, kind of a brown shirt. I do want to talk about the odds of Deshaun Watson playing quarterback for the Browns next year, because they owe that man a lot of money for him to not be the starter. And having two guys drafted at quarterback last year, a weird quarterback,
right? Well, and when the mumblings first started gaining ground yesterday afternoon, that the Browns would not be the Saints' Paris opponent. I mentioned that to someone, and they said, I got blamed. They said, well, you wrote that it would be the Browns. I said, those were my sources at the time, including a major French news outlet, by the way. But whatever. I ate my crow. But then they said, well, are the Steelers that much better than the Browns? And I'm like, this season, I don't know. Traditionally, yes. And they're like, well, why don't they want the Browns in Paris? And I laugh and I said, 2 words, Deshaun Watson.
Probably, yeah. You're not wrong.
We don't need international incidents.
It's a Deshaun. I think that's a really interesting storyline for the Browns, because you can't cut them.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you could. You can't trade them, right? When that contract was signed, we knew, he's not getting traded.
Yeah, man, what kind of lunatic would trade for Deshaun Watson?
Well, mostly that contract. And that's the crazy thing. I'm not even talking about all the bad press that Deshaun has had. I'm talking about the contract. And then here talking about weird moments in our writing careers, because we were both writing during the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And I think we both had sources indicating how close it was to being New Orleans. And that going into that like final day, if you want to call it, like New Orleans was the favorite. And then the Browns swoop in and go, we're going to offer you $1 billion, and offered a ton of money. We were just talking about the what if, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if Deshaun Watson was a New Orleans Saint? You know, like, and obviously, who knows if he gets hurt the way that he does, but obviously, we were at that point, we had the allegations. We knew it was going on. He'd been cleared in court. But what kind of disaster would that have been if the Saints did end up paying $200 million for him?
Because Mickey Loomis might have actually been fired.
Well, we thought the Derek Carr thing was bad. 150, right? We're talking Derek Carr. They've kind of worked everything out off the books, all that good stuff. Imagine Deshaun Watson's $220 million of guaranteed money and him still being on the roster today. That's a moment that I will never forget because I really thought, and I don't know where you were, I don't think we were talking about it, given a lot of our sources are the same. But like I really thought it was, if you want to call like at the finish line, like I really thought we were like 90% done deal. That we were gonna get the Deshaun's New Orleans news going into that final day because it was New Orleans, Atlanta, Cleveland in that order.
It's funny because I had a piece pre-written. Deshaun Watson signs contract with Saints, blah blah blah. It was all written except for a couple details in contract, contract specifications that you plug in when you pre-write these pieces, so that way you can get them out fast. Even though I had pre-written a piece, I had predicted that he would actually end up with the Falcons.
That would have made a lot of sense.
Yep, and it just had Arthur Blank splash move written all over it. I did not think that that Watson would end up being a Saint, and frankly, I was hoping that he wouldn't because of the off-field stuff. Yeah,
to deal with.
Yeah, and I just at the end of the day, I did not think that that neither Loomis or Benson wanted that in New Orleans. It surprised me that they entertained it to the level that they did. But I always felt like at the last minute, they would end up, I'm not going to say backing out of a deal, but not raising the stakes when the others around them were. And I thought the biggest stake raiser would be the Falcons. It ended up being the Browns. But no, I did not. Even though I had a piece pre-written, I did not believe that Watson would end up with the Saints.
It's a good way to put it. I think the Saints folded at the table when everybody else was calling and raising. Atlanta would have made a lot of sense. Final, just random piece on this. Some people know this, some people don't. Atlanta would have made a lot of sense because he's from there. He has a road named after him in the state. And Warwick Dunn helped build his house to go to another Falcons connection. Warwick Dunn was a big mentor to him. And Warwick Dunn and Habitat of Humanity built the Watson home before Deshaun was a big football player. So like there was a lot of connection there that would have made a lot of sense. So the Falcons needed a quarterback. So yeah, I'm very surprised it was Cleveland. But now Cleveland gets to deal with what do we do with a $220 million guy who has played less than 16 games for them? Like that's insane. Is that the worst contract in NFL history? It's got to be up there. We can talk about that another day. We can but that's got to be up there. It's one of the worst contracts.
They're definitely in the short conversation. Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with us over the last week of trying to figure out when we can get on the air. I've been traveling a lot. Bob has had a lot going on as well. but we're back. We're happy to be back. Bob's still writing. You guys can still support Bob. You can still get Bob more money.
Yes, please.
So, Bob, where can people find you and your work, as you're going to have a lot going on tomorrow with the schedule release?
Yeah, like I said, all of us over at the Saints Wire, which can be found on Twitter at Saints Wire, any Google search, as well as the general USA Today network. We're going to be writing about breaking the schedule leaks as they come, and then of course give you the full schedule breakdown as soon as we can get it written. Then the week after that, I will do as I always do. I'll do my my fun historical pieces for each team too. Still got some analytical pieces coming out as well. So make sure you follow all of us over at the Saints Wire, as well as where I still post my pieces, as well as our Bayou Blitz links on my own personal social media. Bob Rose on Facebook at Bobby R 2613, and don't forget to check out, get checked or check out tcynow.org. See what they're all about, folks. Give a little if you could spare it. Because they are there for us, but they need our help to do it. And honestly, the biggest way to help them out and give yourself a little bit more enjoyment in your life is go to Paris, party in Paris with a purpose. Get on board with the Get Checked or Check Out crew, along with some former Saints greats and legends. Book that trip to Paris to watch the Saints play the Steelers on October 25th. Get Checked or Check Out is sponsoring that trip. I gave all the details at the beginning of the show. If you're catching us on the rebound, if you're catching us live and didn't write down the info, please reach out to me, through social media, through text, through email, however you have to get in contact with me. I will be happy to set you up with Tracy Ransom's number. She's the travel agent spearheading the entire package, and believe you me, she has some great prices for you guys.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere right here at BT Boylan. Excited to continue to support Get Checked or Check Out, and a new endeavor for them. Obviously, had the opportunity to take a group of people over to Paris for an NFL game, because it's never happened before. So be a part of history. As Bob said, reach out to him for any contact information, and save up. I also saw that they were teasing whether it's going to be a cruise or whether it's going to be a all-inclusive resort. I was counting the tally. I'm not saying that you didn't, but I was counting the tally, and I was seeing a lot more votes for an all-inclusive resort. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what they choose to do for next year.
Yeah, some details are still getting worked out. The dates, the location, whether it's cruise or resort. We do plan. We were talking unofficially, kind of off to the side, in the Bahamas this year. About doing one or two game day get-togethers. And putting together some kind of financial package where, hey, if you want to be a part of it, it's going to be X amount or Y amount, with everything going to Get Checked or Check Out. Hopefully doing not only something in New Orleans for a game day, but picking one or two away destinations too. Whether it's and leaning towards a place like Charlotte, Baltimore, Cincinnati, someplace like that. So again, when the schedule comes out, we're gonna roll back on those kind of conversations too, to see when we can pull something like that off. But Get Checked or Check Out is in, as well as the Bayou Blitz. We've got some exciting things undoubtedly folding out through 2026 and well into 2027.
Looking forward to it all. We thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Until next week, well, actually, till tomorrow, because I know you guys are going to be reading Bob's articles. Not that we're going to see you face to face, but you guys are going to feel the Bayou Blitz warmth and love through some of Bob's work and reporting tomorrow. But we will see you guys face to face next week. Until then, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you then. Who dat?